What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And today, as the host of Locked On Rockets, we'll be discussing the Woj bomb that dropped on Christmas Day that James Harden would be interested in a return to the Houston Rockets if things don't work out with the Philadelphia 76ers. Why is this news coming out now? What would be the pros and the cons of a return to Houston for James Harden? We're going to break down all of that for you. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball, NFL, they've got you covered for everything over at BetOnline. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get all of your sports betting info. Right now, you can head over to BetOnline to take a look at who the odds-on title favorites are for this season in the NBA. The Boston Celtics still leading the way at plus 350. The Milwaukee Bucks right behind them at plus 550. Brooklyn Nets at plus 1,000, and then rounding out the top five, the Golden State Warriors at plus 1,100, and the LA Clippers also at plus 1,100. So for all those odds and more, be sure to visit betonline.net to learn more about the trends and action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And now it's me, Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets. You can find wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube just by searching Locked On Rockets. Here to discuss the Woj bomb bombshell news that was dropped on us on Christmas Day. Look, it was a big day for guys with beards who wear red, or I guess in this case, used to wear red, as Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reporting that James Harden is seriously considering a return to the Houston Rockets in free agency later this July if he decides against a new deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, there are a few different things to kind of take away from this news. One, why is it coming so early? Why is it here? We're not even 2 months into the season, and we're talking about free agency and whether this is like a leverage play or a legitimate leak or whatever. We are 7 months out from free agency. This is ridiculously early. And even when James Harden was asked about it on Christmas Day ahead of the 76ers matchup with the New York Knicks, he didn't exactly refute the claim. He just got kind of flustered and was like, come on, you didn't even ask me. It's Christmas. You haven't even asked, wished me Merry Christmas. I'm not answering that. I didn't see anything. And it was basically, he denied it without actually denying it. So not exactly looking good on his behalf at this point. But let's look at it first from the lens of why would James Harden want to leave the 76ers is kind of the weird thing, because it feels like the 76ers are almost like a perfect spot for him at this stage in his career, right? He has a tier one superstar that he's paired with in Joel Embiid, top two center in the entire NBA. He's got a budding young star in Tyrese Maxey. He's got role players around him that fit his game, Embiid's game perfectly. He's got his favorite GM of all time running the show in Daryl Morey, ex-Rocket CEO Tad Brown also running the show in Philadelphia. Like, it feels like Philly is a match made in heaven for James Harden. So one thing about this report kind of makes me think that maybe this is just a leak for leverage ahead of his upcoming free agency this offseason to basically be like, hey, don't try and get cute about a contract extension, or I should say a new contract or whatever, because James Harden already sacrificed some money in his last contract with the 76ers so that they could bring in guys like PJ Tucker, like Daniel House Jr., right? Go out and sign guys to help kind of bolster the 76ers roster. And this is a 76ers team that's really starting to find its footing this season. They're running, they got 8 straight wins, big Christmas Day win against the Knicks. They are, when you look up and down the Eastern Conference, clearly probably third or fourth best team out east, but maybe that's just not enough for James Harden. It really is unclear at this point what the reasoning behind wanting to leave Philadelphia would be, but Woj wouldn't just put this out just because. So it's got to be something that has a little bit of legs on it, that there is, at least some serious talk that has made it back to him about James Harden maybe wanting to come home to Houston. That's just what it would be. It would be James Harden coming home, in the 2 years since he's left the Houston Rockets, James Harden has consistently and time again talked about how Houston is and always will be home to him. He still has family that lives here. He's still very much connected to the city, still does a ton of philanthropic work, during the offseason and throughout the season. The NBA giving, the NBA Cares community, all of that working, in tandem with city officials to just make people's lives better in the city of Houston. He claims and loves this city like no other. And there are still Rockets fans who desperately would love to see James Harden back in a Rockets jersey, but ultimately would bringing James Harden back this upcoming summer be the right thing for this young Rockets team to do in its timeline of progressing and moving things forward? And unfortunately, it's not a simple answer. It's not a clear-cut absolutely yes or a clear-cut absolutely no. There's really solid arguments on both sides of the fence here. James Harden is by far a top 3 playmaker, if not maybe the best playmaker in the NBA right now at this stage in his career, leading the NBA in assists per game. I mean, he just had a 21 assist game, his new career high a couple games ago. He is very clearly a dominant playmaking force, somebody that can set up, other guys, can make life easier for everybody else offensively because of his rare combination of skills where he can, score the ball himself. He's got the elite court vision, playmaking, scoring at all 3 levels that kind of prevents the defense from honing in on any one part of his game. And he just reads the opposing defenses so well. He would absolutely make life easier for guys like Jalen Green or Jabari Smith Jr. or Alperen Sengun on this Rockets team. And having a point guard, having somebody kind of running the show who could do that would help the development of those guys, getting the ball to them in their spots where they can be successful, not missing guys when they're wide open, and really just kind of an overhauling of this Houston Rockets offense would just absolutely do wonders for everybody involved. That said, the flip side of the coin is, do you want to commit a max or a near max to an aging star who's going to be 34 years old going into this next season? I think Harden's going to be a star that should age gracefully because the shooting's not going anywhere, the playmaking's not going anywhere. The explosiveness, the deceleration, the first step, all of that will wane as he gets older, but the basketball IQ is not going to go anywhere. If anything, it'll just get better, the longer he keeps playing. But at the same time, would you not be better set if you were to commit that money to a player or a star or a talent that is a bit more alongside the actual age range of your young players so that you could have a little bit more cohesion there? Or is this maybe a situation like with the Suns when they brought in and traded for Chris Paul and brought in Chris Paul to kind of help anchor and buoy that young, talented core of theirs that went 8-0 in the bubble a few seasons ago? I don't necessarily see James Harden in the Chris Paul leadership role for a young group of guys. James Harden isn't that vocal leader, that kind of heavy-handed leader that Chris Paul is and can be. He's more of a lead-by-example type guy. And at the same time, you want this young group of guys, in Houston, these, rookies and second-year players, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., you want them to be able to establish a culture and identity. And this Rockets team doesn't have that yet. It very much felt like that Suns team was starting to establish a culture and identity under Monty Williams, and Chris Paul kind of helped elevate that when he got to Phoenix. Houston doesn't have that yet, unfortunately, under head coach Steven Silas or under this current Rockets regime. And I don't know if necessarily bringing James Harden back, a team that, a player who this team and organization bent over backwards to cater everything to in the years that he was here before, if he comes back, I don't know if that's exactly the right thing you want from a culture perspective for these young guys, setting the right examples, that kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, it might be something as far as the decision-making process and why he might want to ultimately leave Philadelphia. It might just be because he wants to come back to the comfortability and the control of what he had here with the Houston Rockets. I could be convinced if the Houston Rockets did walk away with Victor Wembanyama at the top of this year's NBA draft, then I could be convinced that signing James Harden and kind of catapulting themselves back into relevancy by doing so would be the right move. A starting lineup of James Harden, Jalen Green, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., and Victor Wembanyama sounds like a team that could be poised to make a jump this upcoming season. The Rockets do not own their own draft capital moving forward, as it belongs to the Oklahoma City Thunder from the Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul trade all those years ago. So the Rockets have no incentive to continue bottoming out and being bad starting as early as next season. So is it time for James Harden to return home to the Houston Rockets? Would James Harden coming back to the Houston Rockets be the right thing for this organization? All of you covered for all of that and more right over at Locked On Rockets.